Welcome to another episode of Bloomy in Brisbane. On tonight's episode, Noel Burdette pops by and shows us the different types of mulches. We also visit a beautiful garden called the Johnsia Garden in Logan Reserve. But first, let's go to Noel Burdette as he shows us the different ways to use water-saving products.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about water-saving products. There are so many on the market these days, it can be a little bit confusing as to what and how to use them. Three basic water-saving products that we can all find in our local nurseries are the granular forms, the liquid forms, and the water crystals. But there's a little bit of confusion surrounding them as to how to use them the best in your garden. The first one is the granular form. Now this particular variety of wetting agent, which is what it is something that you would broadcast over the surface of the soil or potting mix. And then you would mix it up into the potting mix and then apply the water to that particular mix or to the soil. As it breaks down, it starts to break up the waxy coating around the potting mix or the soil structure, allowing water to be penetrated far easier around the root systems of plants. So this is something that's very easy that anyone can apply. You don't need to be a scientist. You can apply this very easily around the garden, but best to use in the troubled areas that are often very dry or have difficulty in absorbing moisture or retaining it for a little bit longer. It's really good for using around newly established plants just to help them get a little bit more established just that little bit faster. The other one that's available on the market is the liquid wetting agent. So this is a liquid form that looks like a clear detergent, which is essentially what it can be seen as. And you apply this into your watering can, mix it up into the water. It's always best though to apply it to the water as opposed to applying the water to it, as one of its little attributes is it does foam up, and that tends to scare a lot of people as to how much to use. So add a couple of capfuls into a 10-litre watering can, stir it briskly and then apply it. This is best used, for instance, in pot plants or hanging baskets. For a lot of people, those sort of things dry out very, very quickly. And of course, applying the watering with the wetting agent covers two birds with one stone. So you get the plant that gets the watering, and it also gets the capacity to hold a little bit more water as the time progresses. The last product that's on the market, which is often confused as a wetting agent, is actually the water storing crystals. Many people have actually tried to broadcast this in their gardens or on tops of pots, but to no avail. What this product does, it actually absorbs about 300 times its capacity in moisture and swells up to small jelly-like substances that you can apply into the soil or potting mixtures. This is best used, I think, when planting out new plants in the garden at the bottom of a planting hole. One trick to do with it, of course, is always apply it while it's being completely hydrated. So try to avoid using it in its dry form. It's always best to use while it's nice and plump. One little trick to use, of course, is to put a little bit of liquid seaweed into the water prior to actually putting in the water crystals, and that way the water crystals will actually absorb the seaweed at the same time. So this is a really good trick. Plants can help establish so much faster, and they also get just that little bit of extra nutrition thrown their way. But wetting crystals and water crystals are not to be confused as a wetting agent. They are only a water storing product that the roots can actually grow within, absorb the moisture as required, and then extract it as needed. They will actually last in your pots and in your soil for up to 3 years, and it's a really good thing to use, especially when times are so incredibly dry right now, but any time of the year when you want plants to actually establish just that little bit faster. Now that we've added the crystals to the water, you can see how much it has expanded and how much of this glass vial it has filled up for such a small amount of water crystals that we've added in. As you can see, it's turned into a jellified substance. This is wonderful for using in the bottom of your planting hole underneath the root systems of the plants. It's going to give your plants a wonderful head start for putting down those roots so they can establish very quickly in your garden. This is also an incredible product to use in the way of hanging baskets, because hanging baskets, remember, will always dry out much faster than any other pot or anything else in the garden as well, because of the air currents as they are exposed to those. So always use water crystals the right way and you'll find that you'll always have wonderful success. This week's plant of the week is the euphorbia known as diamond frost. It looks just like its cousin, the large snowflake bush, but only grows to 1 metre tall. Yet it flowers like this with all these beautiful white heads all through the year. So you'll never be without flowers. It is one of the easiest plants to grow in the garden, and right now, as we're all facing tough restrictions with water and the soil is dry and times are really quite desperate in our gardens, we need strong, dependable plants just like this to keep our gardens looking really beautiful. And you know what? As an extra feature, the native bees just absolutely love this plant, so you can be assured of attracting great pollinators to come into your garden. When it looks a little on the thin side, don't hesitate. Get in there and give them a really good haircut, and you'll find that it'll bounce back beautifully for you. So it's there to last a long time in your garden and will add so much beauty. That's the diamond frost euphorbia. Get it at all good garden centres now.
Coming up on Blooming in Brisbane, Noel Burdette with Mulches.
Hello and welcome back to Blooming in Brisbane. Today we'll be talking about mulches. There are so many mulches on the market today that it can be a little confusing as to which one to use. And most people tend to opt for one or just the other, and they use that all over their different types of gardens. So today I thought we'll dispel some of the myths and which ones are going to be really good for your garden and how to use them the best. Most of the mulches that people tend to buy these days are the sugarcane mulch. Now the sugarcane mulch is the most widely available mulch for all over, and it's easy to actually obtain. The best options for sugarcane mulch are the ones to buy in the enclosed clean bales, because you know you're not going to get any weed seeds and large pieces of timber in there as well. So that's a nice, easy and very economical mulch to use. The other mulch that's actually growing in popularity, but still unfortunately still happens to be the most expensive mulch on the market, is lucerne mulch. And lucerne mulch is a very fine graded mulch. It actually has the highest content of nitrogen within it, and because of that it breaks down very quickly in your garden. But it is a wonderful mulch for throwing into vegetable gardens, herb gardens, and it's the mulch I recommend for around the base of roses, because you need to cultivate the roses on a regular basis. The mulch adds the extra nitrogen in there as well. The other types of mulches that people use quite a lot and are very popular in their use are the different types of pine bark mulches that you can get now from most garden centres and landscape suppliers. So the different types of pine bark comes in many different types of textures as well. So you've got the coarse bark mulch and you have the fine bark mulch. Of course, the coarser it is, the longer it'll remain in your garden. The finer it is, the more it'll break down in your garden. One thing to remember with any of the wood-based mulches, and that includes tea tree mulch and also red cypress mulch, is that as the timber starts to break down, it actually can leach out certain levels of nitrogen from your existing garden soil. So a good tip is to, prior to applying these timber mulches, throw a scattering of something like your chicken manure pellets or your bone meal on your soil first, and then you'll find that as that breaks down and releases the nitrogen, that'll go into the mulch itself and your garden won't be depleted or go yellow. This is something that happens quite a lot with people who actually chop down trees and use freshly pulped trees or shrubs as a garden mulch. It's a thing called nitrogen drawdown, and it happens quite a lot when people want to reuse their garden scraps, and I think that's a great thing. But a good tip, keep that aside and let that sit down there in a bottom corner of the garden for about 6 months, so it starts to break down a little, and then throw it onto your garden. Okay, never go too deep with mulches. That's a very important thing. So the last product you can use as a mulch is gravel, and gravel actually is still used today. It used to be very popular in the 70s, I'm sure some of you may remember, but gravel actually is an inert mulch that can actually keep the soil temperatures down. Now mulches work in a way that they keep the temperatures down, or they regulate the temperatures of the soil. They also stop or inhibit the weed growth of your garden, in the garden as well, and they actually can help with a lot of other problems as well, and make the garden really look finished and very nice and pleasant. Now the use of gravel mulch is something I wouldn't say to use on every part of your garden. It does really depend on the style of your garden, and this is the mulch I would say for people who like to have cacti, succulents, those sorts of things, where this type of look can really enhance the plants as well. So it does depend on the style of plants that you have, or the style of garden. Getting back to your timber mulches, this one here for instance is a red cypress mulch, and red cypress is a really good mulch to have because it actually deters termites. So it's a great one to have in the garden, but it looks its best under established trees and shrubs, and also around the likes of, say, azaleas and camellias. So acidifying agents that it is, it works beautifully with that type of planting. So good to remember in that respect. The use of timber mulches such as barks and large wood chips in the vegetable garden is really to be avoided, as they do release tannins and can actually make some of your garden a little bit water repellent. Plus they don't really suit the look of a cultivated vegetable garden. You're best off to go for things like sugarcane or lucerne every time where that's involved. So that's a really good thing to use. There are so many different types of mulches on the market that it can be confusing to know which ones to use in which application. So always let your horticulturalist know what type of application you want it for, and the cheapest isn't always the answer. It all depends on how you want to use it. Things such as the tea tree mulch is a really good one because it's a byproduct from the tea tree oil industry, so you're recycling mulches. You can be assured that the sugarcane mulch, for instance, is only the green tips of the sugarcane. So by choosing the right mulch for your garden, you can be assured that your garden can look cohesive, can look very attractive, and be there to last the long haul in between dry periods, when the mulch is going to act and do a really wonderful job and make your gardening lives a little bit easier.
Stay tuned as we visit the Johnsia garden.